to you. So first of all, thank you very much for that. Dinesh Gundurao ji, Girish Chodankar ji, Digambar Kamat ji, Shri Alex Sequeira ji, Shri Srinivas ji, Joe Diaz ji, and workers of the Congress Party, Youth Congress volunteers, Mahila Congress, Minority Congress, members of the media. I feel privileged to be able to address you today, even though it's election season, and you must be quite fed up of listening to speeches of politicians, many of them promising you lots of things which you aren't very sure whether are going to happen or not. But actually this election for Goa is really, really significant. And it's significant not just from the point of view of us political parties, but particularly from the point of view of Goa. What we have here is a state rich in resources, rich in natural beauty, rich in skill, with a good youthful population, and yet the second highest in unemployment in India. And yet the focus of the government, instead of being on development, instead of being on how to move forward, how to protect the natural beauty of Goa, how to protect your resources, or at least to utilize them for your own good, there is no such focus. The focus is only on staying in power, and by whatever means one can stay in power. You saw the biggest example of that was what happened after the result of the last election. It was very clearly evident that power was being usurped, and democracy was being upturned. You then got a government that focused on creating wealth for its own industrialist friends. You have a huge example of that here in Goa itself. You have the double laning of the highway. You have these three projects, the highway expansion, the double tracking, and the electricity lines that are going through your natural habitat, carrying coal from one end to the other, only for the benefit of one single industrialist. Not a single youth from Goa is getting a single job out of this exercise. What are you getting? You're getting pollution, your environment is being destroyed. So this is symbolic of actually what is happening to Goa. If you listen to the speeches of BJP leaders, they tend to say that they want to build a golden Goa. And every time I hear that, I think of that story, of the goose that laid the golden eggs. Of the farmer and his wife who had found the goose which was laying golden eggs, and they were enriching themselves by selling these golden eggs. And then one day they sat down, they became so greedy that they had a discussion with each other and said, look, this goose must be having so many golden eggs inside, why don't we just cut her up and take them out? And to me, that is what is being done to your state. They are seeing resources, there is greed, they are seeing huge amount of resources, and they're wanting to take those resources to enrich themselves, rather than actually enriching the state, understanding your culture. There is a disrespect for your individuality, for your culture, for your identity. And when you have a government that actually internally cannot accept your differences, cannot accept your culture the way it is, does not want it to flourish, wants a uniform culture, then the result is that your state suffers, that you suffer. Everywhere in Goa, wherever I have been, I was here earlier for campaigning. I spoke to people from all different sections of society. I spoke to women, I spoke to young people, I spoke to fishermen. Everybody was under stress and pressure. Nobody, not one of them, could answer the question I asked, has your life improved in the last 5 years? With a yes. Not a single one of them. Each one only said that they had added stress. You have a flourishing tourism industry. It's been the most affected with COVID. You saw that during COVID, there was very little support for you from the government. Aside from that health support and the health services, and even helping those doctors and nurses to perform their duties, making life easier for them, rather than complicating it further, you didn't see any of that happening. At the same time, you saw that because of COVID, because of the lockdowns, your tourism industry was deeply affected. Again, nothing was done to help you. We've seen a budget recently, and in that budget, there are lots of provisions for the big industrialist friends of the government. But there are no provisions for the middle class, there are literally no provisions for the poor, and there are no provisions for the small and medium businesses on which manufacturing thrives and on which jobs thrive. So when we say unemployment is an issue, the greatest employers across the country are the small and medium businesses, are the businesses that you run, your tourism business here, somebody's running a small hotel, somebody's running a restaurant, those are good for employment. Small manufacturing units, those actually help employment. There is absolutely no stress in supporting them. There is no focus on what could have been done once, of course, Corona hit the whole world. In that sense, everybody was affected. But you've seen in other countries how the government worked proactively to help those affected businesses. How they provided support, how they, for example, I know in the state I work in Uttar Pradesh, which is quite different from Goa, and much larger. But I find over there that people were paying their electricity bills. So shopkeepers were paying their electricity bills through the lockdown, but they had no business. So they started taking loans, and now they are mired in debt. So unless you have a government that thinks progressively, that thinks for you, and that is actually has its heart in the right place, to be honest, that thinks of the state as an identity of its own, with a culture of its own, and of the country, you cannot flourish and progress. So I am here, and I've come all the way to say to you that you are watching what is going on around you. You've seen what has happened in the Mole forest. You have seen what has happened with the hills and the jungles of your beautiful state. You have seen how on Goa Mukti Divas, people were beaten up by the police. You have seen how heritage buildings are being harmed in old Goa. You've seen the job scams, which we are seeing all over the country under BJP rule. I'm seeing in Uttar Pradesh, the children are giving exam after exam. After they give the exam, the cutoff date is changed. The paper leaks, so the exam is cancelled. Then they give another exam, and they wait in hope. They wait for a year, they wait for 2 years. Some children are waiting for 5 to 6 years. And here you have an insane example in which the PA of the minister gets 100 on 100 on a job exam. So there are scams being carried out instead of employment being given. Every government has jobs to give. It also has the funds to help you create employment. None of that is being done here. You're able to see it very clearly. As I said about small businesses, you had GST, you had the lockdown, and right before that, I think I was in Goa at the time when the Notbandi was announced, and suddenly you had demonetization. Now this affected the small and medium businesses worse than it affected anyone else in the country. We were all told, line up, because this is your patriotism and black money is going to be brought back into India. Nothing happened. We never saw a penny of that black money. What we did see was the collapse of many, many hard-working people's businesses which had been built with their sweat and toil. And till today, post-GST, post-demonetization, and post the COVID and the lockdowns, there is no support from the government for you. We hear them talking about building a casino capital here. There's nothing they're doing for the service industry. They talk about safety for women. And I have a fact here, a figure of 24% rise in crime against women in Goa. There is apparently a minister who in one of these cases blamed the girl for the violence that happened against her. And this is typical of a mindset that is unaccepting of actually what the truth is, and unaccepting of the fact that women are equals. You know that I have been working very hard to bring women into the political process. And in Uttar Pradesh, we've said that 40% of the women will fight the elections. The reason I am doing this, you're nodding, come to Uttar Pradesh. I'll have come here and work after that here, work hard on convincing these men here. So why am I doing that? I'm actually doing it for 2 or 3 different reasons. The first and foremost is that as women and 50% of the population, it is our right to have 50% of the representation. And it's not something anybody is doing us as a favor. It is our right. And we want to fight for our right. But more than that, I feel that politics today has become filled with hatred. It's become filled with anger. You know, you hear speeches, 90% of the speech is negative. Maybe about the other party, but 90% is negative. And there is no positivity in it. I firmly believe that us women, being the practical people that we are and having to always handle so much, actually can bring that positivity, that compassion into politics as well. So it's my belief that all of us women should be helped also to stand up on our feet. And to that, I would like to say that the Congress party in Goa has come out with a manifesto. And in the manifesto, there are a lot of nice things for women, which I would like to tell you about. I'm going to read it. In government jobs which will be provided in Goa, 30% of them will be for women. There will be a working women's hostel in Margao and Panaji for working women. And there will be an increase in the number of police stations which are manned by women. And the SHGs will all get 1 lakh rupees of support for each SHG. And aside from that, there are many more things which are in our manifesto. One of them is that there is a Nyay scheme in which 6,000 rupees per month will be given to all the weakest families to help them support themselves. Because one of the things that has happened after all Corona, lockdown and so many other wrong policies of the government is that those who are poorest and weakest can no longer sustain themselves. This will also help to inject some money into the economy, and that will also help other businesses and the smaller businesses.
छत्रपतींचा विचार म्हणजे